reading this morning is from Matthew 4, verses 1 to 11, and is entitled, The Temptation of Jesus. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit in the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to him, "All these I will give to you if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said unto him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came down and waited on him.
Let us pray. Indeed, God, we are always open and interested and hungry to know what you require of us, what you call to us. And so in this time, we open to that call. We open to your presence, and we open to your influence in our lives through Scripture, through the still small voice within. Amen. So I have to confess a moment of jealousy. So right off the bat, I might as well just declare that. Ken got to be up there to start with. And I looked up at the high persona of Ken. And I thought, oh, lucky! I'm sure I will have plenty of opportunity during the Anything Goes production to trip over my own feet up there. So, but this is where all the action will take place, on the deck of the SS America, as it sails from New York to England in a couple of weeks. And this is our chancel for the next 5 weeks, upon which we will make our way through the season of Lent. The season of Lent has always been a time of introspection, traditionally a time of fasting, of looking at where we have been and where we think we might be going, and in particular in the Christian tradition, what that might cost us. What might be the price, the cost, as Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, of discipleship? And that questioning process this year will have the backdrop of anything goes. Well, that was just too sweet an opportunity to let pass. I mean, not only do we have the set of a group of people on a journey, which is arguably the most common metaphor for the community of faith in the Judeo-Christian tradition that we have, the journey. But the challenge of Lent is right there in the title. Anything goes. Really? Anything? Ironically, we start the journey from a scriptural point of view in the desert with Jesus. And this is where we get mixed metaphors, and so you'll just have to bear with me. But there's Jesus in the desert where he is tested 3 times. 3 times. Challenged to turn this gospel ship around, at least to give over the helm to the tempter. And that the word tempter or Satan or devil is interchangeable in the Gospel of Matthew. You might have noticed that. Different titles throughout the same story for the same entity. So first of all, I want to clarify. The devil is really a late English addition to the characters in our tradition. This is, so when you think of the devil, the guy, red suit, red face, horns, that one, that figure would be completely unfamiliar to the original hearers of this story. The original hearers would hear the word Satan or Satan, the one that God was in conversation with in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Remember that one? The one that went up to God in the book of Job and said, I'll make you a deal. I don't think these people are faithful to you because of goodness in them. I think it's just in their best interests. I bet you I can turn one. I can turn your most faithful. And God makes this deal with the Satan. Yeah, go after Job. I am sure, says God, he will not turn. So that's the character that people, the original hearers, would have had in their minds when they heard this story. The Satan is not really the cinematic personification of evil that we think of today, but rather a kind of official opposition to God in the heavenly court. The one who tests those who are on God's side. Now I give you all that background because in this story, the devil plays a really important role. I mean, far be it from me to be arguing for the devil. But there wouldn't be much of a story without him in this case, would there? And he serves a huge purpose in the story. Jesus has been baptized by John in the Jordan River, has received the blessing of God. You are my beloved child. In you I am well pleased. And then he is drawn out into the desert to fast and pray and let that blessing and that call sink deep into himself. And he is there for 40 days. And who better to do the testing than the Satan, the official opposition? The season of Lent is a time when we give the official opposition a little bit of leash so that we can really honestly ask the hard questions and really test the sturdiness of our faith. So any of you remember Peter Rollins? He came here a while ago, like maybe almost 2 years ago, I think it was. He was the little Irish theologian guy, and he told great stories and was like really smart, hard to follow sometimes. He talked about pyrotheology, the fire, all-consuming theology. Well, Peter does a program every year. He does it online. You can join in if you like. He calls it Atheism for Lent. Yeah. You kind of let go a little bit of your stronghold on Christian fare for a period and give atheist voices some room to speak to you as an exercise to test the sturdiness of your faith. I mean, do atheists have a point to make ever? And if so, we should be listening, because there could be a genuine critique in whose fire our faith could be refined, strengthened, given, grounded more firmly. Who better to burn off the dross of our faith than atheists? That's the role that the devil plays in this story. And he really puts it to Jesus. He starts at the most basic level, the appetite. Jesus has been fasting for 40 days, and he counsels Jesus to use the power that he has to turn stones into bread and feed his appetite. Appetite is a most basic human drive. It's our survival mechanism. Hungers live in the stem of the brain and are there to keep us alive. But God help you if they take over. One reason people have fasted as a spiritual practice for hundreds and hundreds of years is to keep that drive in check. Make sure that it doesn't take over. Be aware of the hungers that drive us and make sure that they are not our masters, but quite the other way around. But then the testing gets a little bit more sophisticated. He goes after Jesus' doubt. Takes him to the top of the temple and says, "Throw yourself off and see if this God of yours who claims to be there for you will catch you." But faith would not be faith if we were constantly putting it to the test. That would be to cheapen faith, to turn it into a little deal we have with God. Our relationship with God must be deeper than cheap tricks like that. And then finally, he goes after the central question of our faith, the question of power. "I can give you power over all of this," he says, "from the top of a high mountain as far as you can see, if you will just worship me." This is the allegiance question. Who is your ultimate allegiance to? Who are you going to place your trust in, ultimately? Will it be God, or will it be something else? Who will you worship when you wake up in the morning? Will it be God, or will it be, say, the market? The bank balance? Will it be status? Or all of the smaller gods that try to lay claim on our souls, on our allegiance? And ultimately, that's the end question that is present at the very beginning of Jesus' ministry and is present at the very end as well. "Take this cup from me, if it is at all possible. But not my will, but your will be done." That's the allegiance question. And it weaves its way all the way through the Lenten journey. And it weaves its way all the way through our lives. Whether we know it or not, we are investing ourselves in some spiritual entity. And the question is it the Spirit of God? Or is it our ego? Or is it our fear fear and insecurity? And Jesus' response is, of course, that's not how this works. I worship God. My allegiance is with God. And having withstood the testing of the Satan, Jesus is cared for by benevolent spirits, the angels. It's a great story and a really great start to the Lenten journey, because it gives us a framework to open to the testing of our own faith through these next 5 weeks. And it's really okay to question, to wrestle with the questions of life and faith. In fact, it is good to spend a whole good season challenging our faith. It will become stronger in the process. There's a couple of touchstones that we will come back to. A touchstone is a thing that you rub up against and you remember what you're about. The touchstone that we just sang, what does the Lord require of you, from Micah 6? But to seek justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. We touch on that and let what that means in terms of our lives and our allegiance sink in. There is another touchstone that's not on your bulletin, but will appear throughout the season, and that is a quote from Rumi. And it goes like this: "Beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I will meet you there." Think about that. Think about that in the context of a world that wants to create black and white, right and wrong, good and bad, in which fears are exploited in order to polarize us. We hear, beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And there we will have a fruitful conversation about how we will live our lives. And the title of the musical sets the theme. Does anything go? Well, let's have that conversation in that field. Jesus was tested in the desert, and it really mattered. There are some things he stood for and some things he didn't, and his relationship with God was at the center. But in life, sometimes things change. What used to be okay isn't okay, and what was taboo years ago seems to be okay now. And how do we wend our way through the changing world so that we can get to that field beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing and feel like we are authentically living our lives? And our evening speaker series will punctuate this season, where we talk about some of those shifting realms and issues in our world. There are substances that used to be illegal that are no longer illegal. And there is an opioid crisis that has killed 3,600 people in British Columbia in the last 4 years. What is going on? And what is a faithful way through that turmoil? Sex and sexuality. This is an area in which the norms have really changed over the years. How do all these changes affect the way we live, the way we parent, the way we as a community of faith express ourselves in the community and what we believe. Technology and media have huge effects on our lives. What we see, what we experience, how we relate with each other. That too is a shifting landscape. How will we navigate it faithfully? And finally, the last part of life, living well and dying well. I can tell you by my own experience in the last 2 years that medical assistance in dying has changed the landscape completely in that last piece of life. And we who have always held life as a precious gift from God, how will we navigate that new environment? Does anything go? Probably not. But I hope you will pick up the question. Find a way to wrestle with it in that fruitful ground between right doing and wrong doing, and meet us together in that field where we will ground ourselves in the presence of God. Amen.